Hey guys, it's Rebecca. So today I'm going to be filming the Evermore Book Tag. This was created by Enchanted Reader. I'll leave the original video below so you can go and check that video out on her channel. But yeah, I'm quite a big Taylor Swift fan. I have loved her since like really around like the time Fearless came out. I love her a lot. So I think that even though like it's been a bit of time since Evermore came out, I've seen a few people do this tag and it's made me really want to do it. So I thought I would just go ahead and film it. And yeah, I'm just gonna get right into answering the questions. So the first prompt is Willow, a book that is a masterpiece. And whenever I was kind of coming up with the answers to these questions, I just went with the first thing that came into my mind. And the first thing that popped into my mind was Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This is a classic that a lot of people know about. It's quite a popular classic. I don't think it's well loved at all on BookTube, which is very odd. I think a lot of people have read it on BookTube, but not a lot of people have loved it, which I find really disappointing. And I think that might be partially because of the quite like confusing nature of that book. Not to say that I don't think people are understanding it. I think that it can just be like a book that's quite hard to grasp because it's so character based and just because of the general narrative structure and everything like that. But I think that because of the amount of people that haven't liked it on BookTube, I think that it puts off a lot of other people reading Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights doesn't really have a plot. It's kind of based on the evolution of relationships and how social class, upbringing, childhood, love, money, and just the general everyday kind of living that kind of can influence relationships and how they evolve and how they develop and how they can change, really. But I also get that it depicts heartbreak in the most not only romanticized, definitely romanticized, but also real and natural kind of raw way that it does, especially with the kind of morally grey, despicable characters that are in that book. I think that people kind of expect this kind of plot, this kind of Jane Austen narrative that you don't see in Wuthering Heights. I think that you get to see that in Jane Eyre and you get to see that in books like Agnes Grey and things like that, but we don't see it in Wuthering Heights. I think that puts a lot of people off the book, but to me, that is why that book's a masterpiece, because it doesn't follow these kind of conventional narrative structures. You just kind of have to go in there not expecting a plot. You're not reading Jane Austen, you're reading Wuthering Heights. It really stands apart, I think, from other books, and it's not as hard or as intimidating to read as people make it out to be. I definitely think if you have got used to Jane Austen, if you've read Pride and Prejudice, if you've read Emma, if you've read Jane Eyre, I really don't see why this should be a big struggle for people, because I think people imagine it to be that way, and then you go for it and it's not actually. But then again, it's just not to some people's tastes. Completely rambling there, but I think that more people should give it a go and not be frightened of it, because you more than likely will understand it and will be able to get into it and will be able to appreciate it, at least be able to appreciate what other people love it for, and doesn't necessarily mean you will, but I think Wuthering Heights is one of those books that's an experience, and yeah, I just love it so much. So don't be afraid to read it if you are considering it, basically is what my point is. So the next question is Champagne Problems, a book that caught you off guard, and I'm going to kind of take this one as one that you didn't expect to like but did. My answer has to be Throne of Glass, because this is the one that massively stands out to me. I was expecting to despise Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas because of it being about assassins. I just thought this is going to be terrible, this is going to be cringy, like the same kind of like aliens, kind of robots kind of vibes I got from Assassins. I don't know why, because I do love fantasy. I love like elves, I love like dragons, all of those kind of creatures like intrigue me, but for some reason powerful female who is just like not like other girls, like that's what I was imagining. And not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with a powerful female, but I thought it was going to go for the vibe of not like other girls, because I'm so like badass and amazing, and that just like really puts me off YA books whenever they're like that, as it puts off most people. So that's what I was imagining, but it wasn't like that at all, and I really loved it. I really enjoyed it because it's just so much fun, and it's just not to be taken that seriously. It's not like a literary masterpiece like Wuthering Heights, but it is really good and it's really fun, and I don't care what anybody says, it's a really good YA book, because I have really low expectations right now for YA for some reason, because I go in reading these really popular YA books and absolutely despise them, like, just to put it bluntly. But I didn't get that from Throne of Glass. I absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed it, because that's what I look for whenever I read YA. If I was going to go for something literary, beautifully written and everything like that, I would pick up a classic or an adult literary fiction book I wouldn't go for YA fantasy for that. And I think that a YA fantasy should do its job, and its job is to entertain people who are young and tell a story. And I think that Sarah J Maas does an amazing job at that, as well as like depicting results of trauma and how people handle trauma and like the reality of emotion. And I just think it's absolutely amazing, especially that's more like kind of in the books as they go on, but I don't know, I just really loved it. I thought it was absolutely amazing, so I'm a massive Sarah J Maas fan now. Okay, so the next prompt is Gold Rush, a book with a gold cover. I just tried to get King of Scars out of my little book trolley, but I can't get it out without like basically ruining the dust cover, because it's among like so many other books, so I don't want to pull it out. I should have done this before, but yeah, I don't want to pull it out because it'll be too stressful. I don't want to ruin it. Yeah, I'm gonna go for a book that I want to read rather than a book that I already really like for this question, because it's the first one again that popped into my head. So yeah, I'm gonna say King of Scars. I really want to read this one because I absolutely love Nikolai, so it'll be really interesting to read from his point of view. That's really all I know about this. I know that's obviously about Nikolai and that it's set in the Grishaverse, so that's enough for me to read it. It's Leigh Bardugo. That's like enough for me, so I'm really excited to get to that one soon, especially because the second one's coming out really soon. So the next prompt is Tis the Damn Season. This one is basically a winter book or a Christmas book. I haven't read any kind of wintry Christmassy books that I've actually enjoyed, so again I'm going to go for one that I want to read, and that I think it's called Letters from Father Christmas by J.R.R. Tolkien. I have a little really beautiful edition of this at home. I just didn't manage to get to it for any of the past Christmases that I've had it basically, so hopefully next Christmas will be the time that I get to it, because there's no way I'm reading Letters from Father Christmas during the spring or any time after Christmas. I really want to read this. I think it might be kind of letters J.R. Tolkien writing as Father Christmas to his children, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but it's a beautiful little cute edition, and yeah, as I said, I hope that I get to that one next Christmas. So the next prompt is Tolerate It, and this question is a problematic book. I'm going to say this book for a different prompt, but now I couldn't think of like one for this prompt because I haven't actually read that many problematic books, but the perfect one just came into my head, and that is Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. I loved this book whenever I was about 14, and I think at that age I kind of didn't notice any awful quotes that are in there. At the time reading it I thought it was super cute, but looking back it's definitely problematic, not only from what other people have pointed out, but also my sister read it and pointed out a few bits and pieces to me, which I just thought was really questionable and definitely problematic. As I said, I did love it at the time, but I'm not going to reread it anytime soon at least, and yeah, it's problematic. That's all that I really have to say. So the next one is No Body, No Crime, and this one is a mystery or murder investigation. So for this one I was going to go for Stalking Jack the Ripper because it was the first one that came into my head, but I'm not going to go for that one. I'm going to go for My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. Although this one isn't as good as Rebecca in my opinion, it's still a really good book. Obviously Rebecca has blown up in popularity, partially I think due to people finding a really accessible classic, but also because of the film that just came out starring Lily James, which I think if you've read the book is a really good adaptation, but I don't know how good it stands by itself. If you've read the book, I think it's an extremely beautiful adaptation, and I think it was done really well. A review that I wrote on the 6th of September 2017, and it's got a quote from My Cousin Rachel that says, "Go back into your shadows, Tom, and leave me some measures of peace." Obviously Daphne du Maurier is a fantastic writer, and that quotation just there has just made me really want to reread My Cousin Rachel. I gave it 4 stars, and I wrote, My Cousin Rachel is an absolutely stunning novel with the beautiful writing of du Maurier enchanting the pages as always. The book is one that I know will stay with me always, as her books always leave a form of imprint on my mind, the kind of writing that I simply can't forget. It is haunting and lovable all at the same time. I have never read about such a realistic character like Philip. He is brutally honest, and for that reason alone he is a credible character and extremely relatable. And then I quote, I felt myself go scarlet. Good God, what had I said? Daphne du Maurier has a unique trick that makes real life unfold upon her pages as she intertwines the most simplistic yet everyday occurring emotions that come into our minds and thoughts. I think that this novel completely captures what people would now call the toxic relationship. The manipulation of Rachel is lingering upon reality. We looked at her, tortured without hope, while she looked back at us in accusation. Philip is a lovable character as he is foolishly blinded by love for a woman who does not love him back. What is more scarring than unrequited love? If this is madness, then I would want to stay that way for always. I did not know lunacy could give such delight. And then I go on. Yeah, I know that was kind of long and probably terrible the way I read that out. I'm going to read out the book description that's on Goodreads because I'm awful at them basically. Orphaned at an early age, Philip Ashley is raised by his benevolent older cousin Ambrose, I can't speak today. Resolutely single, Ambrose delights in Philip as his heir, a man who will love his grand home as much as he does himself. But the cosy world the two construct is shattered when Ambrose sets off on a trip to Florence. There he falls in love and marries, and there he dies suddenly. Jealous of his marriage, rocked by suspicion at the hints in Ambrose's letters, and grief-stricken by his death, Philip prepares to meet his cousin's widow with hatred in his heart. Despite himself, Philip is drawn to this beautiful, sophisticated, mysterious Rachel like a moth to the flame, and yet might she have had a hand in Ambrose's death? So yeah, it's kind of like a mystery thriller-esque novel, just kind of what you would expect from a du Maurier novel, very similar to Rebecca, but as I said, I wouldn't say as good, but that's just because Rebecca's an absolute masterpiece and mind-blowing. It's 100% worth reading and people don't read it, and it's very odd to me that it's not become more of a thing to read more du Maurier yet on BookTube, but I guess that's because Rebecca has just kind of taken over all of a sudden, so people haven't had a chance. My Cousin Rachel's really worth reading. It's an extremely good book, so yeah, everybody should just go and read that one as well, especially if you enjoyed Rebecca. The next one is Happiness, a book about hope. I'm sorry, but I have no idea if I've even read a book about hope. I don't think that I ever have. I'm sorry, I just can't think of one for this. I just literally cannot think. I've been thinking all day and I just can't come up with them. My mind's like blank or something, but I don't know a book about hope. So the next one is Dorothea, a book to movie adaptation, and for this one I'm going to go for one that I want to watch because, as I said, there's not very many good ones and I don't want to just say The Hunger Games because that's so basic. So I'm going to say The Hate You Give. Although I haven't read it, it's right there and I'm going to read it ASAP. I know I always say that, but I really am 100% going to read this in 2021. But as soon as I've read it, this is why I haven't watched the adaptation. As soon as I've read it, then I want to watch it like right after. So considering I'm going to read the book really soon, I'm also going to be watching the movie really soon, and I am really hoping that it'll be good. I would also like you to tell me in the comments if you did enjoy the Hate You Give adaptation. I haven't heard that much about it, to be honest, but I really want to watch it, especially after I've read it, as I've said. So I'm really excited for that one. So the next one is Coney Island, a book that brings back memories, and to be honest, I can't answer anything else to this apart from The Hunger Games. There is a few that I guess I could say, but this one 100% will always bring back memories for me. I was full on like hardcore fan of The Hunger Games. I absolutely loved them. Around just before the movies came out, I started reading them, and oh my god, I loved those books with all of my heart. They're what got me into watching BookTube and everything like that, and they just like changed my life completely. Like genuinely, I loved those books with all of my heart. Now reading them to my brother, they're just amazing. Like they'll always be amazing. Like they just like completely stand apart. They just will always be so fantastic, and reading them again just brings back so much memories, and I just love them so much. They're just amazing. The next question is Ivy, a book that you can't help but love or a guilty pleasure, and for this one I'm going to not say Shadow and Bone, that's what I was going to say, but instead of Shadow and Bone I'm going to say Beautiful Creatures by Cami Garcia and Margaret Stoll. These books were quite popular quite a while ago. I think that they were quite talked about on BookTube, kind of around like the Hunger Games kind of adaptations and things like that, like the first Hunger Games adaptation, so around that like 2012 kind of era probably. I love these books. I will still say that I love these books, and reading The Raven Boys currently I get such Beautiful Creatures vibes. And I've reread Beautiful Creatures a couple of times and I really want to continue on to Beautiful Darkness. I love Beautiful Creatures. It gets such bad reviews and everything like that, and it's definitely not like a literary masterpiece. It's not the best book in the world. To me it is. I absolutely love it and I could read it a million times. It's one of those like comfort reads as well for me. I hopefully will actually go on to Beautiful Darkness this year because I so enjoyed reading Beautiful Creatures a couple of years ago and I can remember what happened and everything, so I might go on to Beautiful Darkness and that would just be so much fun. Nobody really knows now what they are. I asked everybody like on a live the other day, like, had anybody read Beautiful Creatures? Everybody's like, what is that? It shocked me quite a lot, but yeah, they're so good. I don't know, tell me if you read them in the comments. I absolutely love those books and I stand by it. I still think they're so good. I love them. Cowboy Like Me, a book that you didn't expect to love but did. For this one I'm actually going to like reverse the question because I honestly think that the one that I answered Through a Glass for is like basically the same question. I'm going to say a book that I expected to love but didn't. Maybe actually that is the question, I read it wrong, but anyway, that's what I'm going to answer it as. So definitely for this one is Frenchmans Creek by Daphne du Maurier. I expected to absolutely love this and absolutely, well, I didn't hate it, I just really didn't like it. I think I gave it like probably like 2.5 stars. It's basically about this woman who isn't happy in her relationship, so she basically finds this other man who's like a pirate and kind of goes on adventures with him. At the time I was kind of like, oh my god, like, you're cheating on your husband. But I think that he was actually abusive. I read this whenever I was like a lot younger. I genuinely might have completely different opinions on it than I would have now, so don't hold me like accountable to that one. At the time I think it wasn't only just like the cheating plot, but also just the plot in general, like the whole book I just wasn't entertained by as much as like her other books, especially. Like, I just didn't think that it was as good. It didn't live up nearly as well to the other ones that I've read. So yeah, that one was quite a disappointing one for me, and it's one that I don't really talk about as much, so I just thought I would put that in there. The next one is Long Story Short, so basically a book that's under 300 pages, and I'm going to choose one that I've already read and loved, and that is Franny and Zoe by J.D. Salinger. This one is only about, this is 150 pages, and I absolutely love this little book. I really need to reread it, but I think it's fantastic. J.D. Salinger is one of the best writers at dialogue and characters, just generally really amazing, well developed characters. I think he's fantastic for that, especially in such a small kind of amount of pages. He's one of my favourite writers, but this is definitely up there with The Catcher in the Rye. Fresme with Love and Squalor and Raise High the Roof Beams definitely aren't as good as Franny and Zoe and The Catcher in the Rye. I need to reread them all basically, but this is definitely one of my favourites of his. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, it's just like character based about this little family, and there's quite a lot of like literary references, especially to Hemingway and things like that, which I always find really entertaining. And nobody really ever talks about this one. Everyone reads and hates The Catcher in the Rye for whatever reason, for some really random reason, but this one everybody should read and love, and everybody should love The Catcher in the Rye too. I've got some comments in my last video actually saying how people actually really enjoy The Catcher in the Rye, which made me so happy because I hardly ever hear anybody say that. This one is so good, and there's just been new editions of these brought out, so you can go and get yourself one of those and you can read it, and you can message me, DM me on Twitter, or just comment or something saying I got this, I'm going to read it, and yeah, DM me your thoughts, go and read this book. It's so good, and the new editions are beautiful. I love these editions too. I've got nearly all of these apart from Fresme with Love and Squalor because I borrowed that from a friend when I read it. But yeah, this one is fantastic. Everybody needs to go and read it, and as I said, it's only 150 pages, so go read it. It's really short, and you know, you can put that in anywhere in your TBR because it's so small. So the next one is Marjorie, and this one is a biography. I don't know if this one counts as a biography because I forget like the difference between like biography and autobiography and everything like that. I forget like the difference. That might be like a bit of like stupidity from me, but genuinely I forget. I don't read that kind of thing, but the only thing that came to mind for this like kind of thing was The Life of Charlotte Bronte by Elizabeth Gaskell. I really want to read some Elizabeth Gaskell books, especially North and South, because Jasmine reads, it was one of her like I don't know if it was top 10, it was her top favourite books of 2020, and I have a Penguin English Library edition of it, and it's beautiful. And yeah, I just want to try Elizabeth Gaskell because I love that kind of Victorian kind of era kind of books. Also, she wrote The Life of Charlotte Bronte, and apparently she was like one of the only people to have actually met Charlotte Bronte to have written about her life, which I find so interesting. And I have The Life of Charlotte Bronte at home. I've got this really like big edition, which will be really cool because like the font will be massive, so then really easy to read. I really want to read that. I've been wanting to get that for ages, so hopefully I'll get to that soon because I just love learning about the lives of really famous classic authors who just make a massive impact on literature. I love to read about that. I just find it incredible to read about. So yeah, I hope I'll get to that one soon. It just sounds amazing, and I'm sorry if that doesn't count as a biography. I hope it does, but it probably doesn't. But yeah, it's about somebody's life, so hopefully that'll count at least a bit. The next one is Closure, favourite last book in a series. So to be honest, thinking about this, I hadn't actually read that many series the whole way through. I'm gonna kind of cheat because I guess it's a duology and not a series, but I'm gonna go for Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This is better than Six of Crows in my opinion. I think a lot of people will agree with that. Even though for me both of the books were 5 stars, this one was even better because you already got to know the characters, the world's less confusing because you've got used to it, everything like that, and just like the plot in general. I absolutely loved Crooked Kingdom, and I think that it's very hard for a sequel. Surprise, surprise, my camera overheated yet again, as it always does if I record anything more than basically 5 minutes. I can't really remember what I was talking about. I know I was talking about Crooked Kingdom, but yeah, as I said, I prefer that one over Six of Crows, and it's a really good book and everybody should go and read Six of Crows because it's amazing. So the last prompt is Evermore, a book that was painful to get through. So for this one I'm not going to answer this because it's necessarily a bad book, but because it's a very long book, and that is Bleak House by Charles Dickens. This is about 1,000 pages long. This is a very big but very good book. I absolutely loved it. It has beautiful illustrations. It's a really good book. It's a massive book, so it's definitely a task, and I was obviously reading this at the same time as trying to get my essays done for university and everything like that, so it took me quite a while to get through. It took me about 2 months to get through, and I ended up not really reading anything else for that amount of time. It took me quite a while to get through. I did read this quite slowly, and I think that that's probably what made it kind of me so anxious to get it finished near the end, but I'm so glad I read it, and now I'm quite ahead of uni since I've got this read, because it's like the biggest task basically of the whole term. So yeah, I really did love this one. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It's not my favourite Dickens in the world, but it is also definitely worth a read if you're really into classics, and I would give this one a go. Yeah, it's a really good book. It's really big but that's the reason why it was a bit painful, because I was really excited to get onto more things to read, which is kind of sad that big books kind of make you feel like that, but it's also a really good book, and I'm really glad that I read it, because as I said, I did give it 4 stars because Dickens is just amazing. So that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed watching, and if you did, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell down below so that you can be notified when I upload, because it really helps me out. As I said, I'll leave a link to the original video and channel down below so that you can go and check that out. Definitely leave me comments if you've read any of these books, if you want to read any of these books, your thoughts on this video, anything like that. I would love to hear your thoughts. Just on the top of my head, I'm going to tag 3 people. I'm just going to tag whoever comes into my head. So the first person I'm going to tag is Lizzie Creative, the second I'll tag is Joannatations, and the third person I'll tag is Emily over at Emily Kathleen Reads. So they were just kind of 3 random booktubers that came into my head. So that's who I'll tag. Sorry if we've already done this tag, or if you've already been tagged to do this tag, but it doesn't really matter, I guess. Can't wait to see your answers if you do this tag, and I feel like everybody should feel free to do this tag and watch the original, and I hope you enjoyed this one. As I said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.